Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 29th of June. Today we have some updates, so let's start. And before we start, let's discuss a few things. First of all, as you know, Sweden and Finland were invited to join the alliance. This is an update from the West countries, we can say. And if we're talking about the Russians allies, we can say that Syria has recognized the independence of LPR and DPR. So a lot of interesting events. So let's discuss them. If you ask me about the fact that Sweden and Finland were invited to the alliance, I think that it was the right decision. It was the right decision for these countries, and it was the right decision for everybody. And I don't think that if Finland or Sweden will enter the alliance is very good for the Russians. Of course, there was a lot of rumors, a lot of talks that the border between Russia and NATO will increase. It's okay, we understand, but also we understand that Finland and Sweden is very nice countries. They are very kind people, so I don't think that this situation can bring a lot of problems. Everybody understand that these two countries is a part of European Union, is a part of is a part of West world, is a part of this mentality. So it's like normal. It's a regional way that these countries should be with this part of the world. So to tell the truth, I don't see any aggression, and I think that nobody see any aggression in this action. Of course, there was some agreements between Russia and NATO that NATO shouldn't increase and develop, but they did this. So my opinion that everything is okay in this case, and I don't think that this situation with these two countries can bring anything bad to anybody in this world. I tried, but it's if we are talking about the Finland and Sweden, of course, from their side, I don't think that there are going to be any aggression and any problem to anybody, right? But the question is about the NATO. So I try to understand, try to analyze what is the benefits, what kind of benefits these two countries can bring to NATO. And the only one thing that comes to my mind, of course, is the Baltic Sea, and furthermore, the question with the waters that belongs to the countries. As you can see, this red line that moves on the sea is the territory, is like of interests of countries. For example, this is the Russian Federation, and the area between these two red lines is the water territory that belongs to Russia. And if you take a look at this map, we're going to see that almost entire Baltic Sea is split between countries. There is like a small island in this small sea island in this sea that belongs to nobody, this area. And the only thing that I was afraid of, that maybe by the fact that Finland joins the NATO would cut the road to the sea road to St. Petersburg. And as you can see, there is still some way. This is the territory water of Russian Federation. This one is Estonia, this Finland, and this is a small tunnel between these territory waters. So anyway, the Russians still have some tunnel to reach Kaliningrad for support and so on. Maybe, of course, something tells me that this is the key reason why the Finland entered the NATO, at least from the perspective of NATO, right? To reduce the possibilities of Russia in Baltic Sea, of course. And as you can see, this tunnel is very short, and of course, if anything happens, I'm not sure about the real possibilities, but to cut supply from St. Petersburg towards Kaliningrad is not very difficult because this tunnel is not very wide. I don't know the real legal perspective of this question. Maybe you know, and you can share with us. We will read and we will try to analyze and understand the situation. But I'll repeat myself that the main idea from it's like something tells me, like the fifth feeling, that the main reason why the NATO asked Finland to join them is this coast and this this side of Baltic Sea, exactly this. So as you can see, there's a very short tunnel that the Russians can use to support and to enter the real Baltic Sea. So this is about this sea. If we're talking about Syria and that they recognize the independence of LPR and DPR, this also means a lot because a few weeks ago, we heard that the DPR and the LPR are going and planning to join Russian Federation. So the question is why they were recognized as independent by Syria, because everything there is connected, and I'm sure that Syrian government didn't do this because they wanted. Maybe they wanted, of course, but of course everything was confirmed and everything was in agreement with Russia. So why did they do this if these two republics are planning to join Russian Federation? So this is a very big question. Maybe they want to change something or something like this. And on the basis of this statement, let's take a look at this map. If you take a look at this map, you see that this is Ukraine. This is the west and south, east and south part of Ukraine, and all these territories is Ukraine districts, oblasts, if we are talking in Russian. And the gray districts, is the districts where there are no Russians and they haven't took even a meter of these districts. If we're talking about the colored one, that means that some territory is under the Russians and some territory is under the Ukrainians. And let's go from the north. If we talk about the Kharkiv, we see that Ukrainians still have 67% of the territory and the Russians control just 33%. And about this area, the question is that there were no announcement and no reports, no official notes that the Russians are planning to do something with this area. So they're not planning to connect or to give these territories, let's say, to Lugansk People Republic or Donetsk People Republic. There wasn't any notes, any updates about any referendum on this area. So we know that. And if you're talking about Lugansk People Republic, you see that they have returned, we can say, around 99% of their territory. And you know that there was some kind of referendum in 2014. According to that referendum, this country was liberated. So, and we understand that this is their territory. At least it was recognized by Russia and Syria already. And we understand the legal side and the legal question of this entity. This is Donetsk People Republic. Donetsk People Republic to the west from Lugansk People Republic. As you can see, the Russians, Donetsk People Republic controls just 53% of their territory and 41% is under Ukrainians. If we take a look at this map, the main battles where we expect to be, like Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, Toretsk, New York, is the territory that under Ukrainian control, and this territory, according to the Russians' first goals and according to Donetsk People Republic, their laws, it should belong to Donetsk People Republic. So and about this territory, we know already that there was also referendum in this area, and according to this referendum, this territory was liberated and recognized by Russia and by Syria. So we discussed Kharkiv, nothing. Lugansk People Republic, there was a referendum. Donetsk People Republic, there was a referendum. Now let's talk about Zaporozhye. As you can see, according to this information, we should call the Russians, there is no Zaporozhye People Republic or so on. The Russians control 75% of this territory, and 25% of this territory is under Ukrainians. But important update. Yes, we see that the Russians control the major part of this district, but the thing is that the capital of this district is under the Ukrainians. It's Zaporozhye. If you take a look at this, map, this is the region we are talking about, and this is the capital of this district, Zaporozhye. And now let's talk one more time about the Kharkiv. This is almost the same situation. The Ukrainians also control the capital of this district, but in this case they control more than half. In this case they control less than half. And about Zaporozhye, there were some rumors and some talks about a referendum in the future, and that's it. So I must say that during the previous weeks, I haven't heard anything from this area about any legal actions in the future, like referendum to be liberated, to create their own Zaporozhye, for example, People Republic. There were no talks about this. If we are talking about now, let's move to Kherson. As you can see, Kherson is controlled almost for 100%. It controls for 93%, and the capital is under the Russians. And there are going to be a referendum by the beginning of autumn, somewhere in September. The authorities of this region are planning to start the referendum, and they're saying, at least for now, they're saying that they are planning to join Russian Federation. And it's even today there was a post published by the vice mayor, governor of this area, we can say, and he announced that we are going to make referendum in the beginning of autumn, in September, and the main question would be if the people from Kherson are willing to join the Russian Federation. So we understand what are these territories and people from these territories are going to do. If we're talking about Nikolaev district, the Russians control just less than 2%, and there are no talks, no rumors, nothing about this. We had only one poll deciding when the Russians are planning to start any offensive operations in this area. And you see that if we're talking about like Crimea, it's like 100% under the Russians, and this territory is in the Russian Federation. There also was a referendum and so on. So the question is, we understand everything about Kherson, about Donetsk. We understand the Russians want to help these republics to return their territories according to their vision. Lugansk People Republic is almost done. And the question is about Kharkiv and Zaporozhye. And the question, what the Russians are planning to do with these areas. Because you see that Putin, he likes to make everything according to law. He doesn't like to do everything like he wants. He needs some basis, some legal basis under every single decision. And if we are talking about these regions, everywhere the Russians held some referendum, and on those referendums, the people on these territories determine themselves what are they going to do. Of course, there are a lot of questions, but at least it has some legal side. Let's call it like this. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. Anyway, we can say that this practice has some legal side. But there is no rumors, no updates about Kharkiv and Zaporozhye. And this is very important because we see that the Russians soon, very soon, if everything goes according to the plan, soon the Russians are going to complete all their goals. We know that there are 3 goals that the Russians announced, like denationalization, demilitarization, and to help Donetsk People Republic and Lugansk People Republic to return their lands. To tell the truth, as soon as the Russians are able to establish control over entire Donetsk district, we can say that all those 3 goals will be achieved, because the Ukrainians have demilitarization doesn't mean that you need to destroy every single person who has a machine gun in his hand. Of course not. To destroy more than half of enemy army, to destroy all his vehicles, tanks, or the major of these forces is enough, believe me. So we can say that by the time that the Russian established control over entire Donetsk Oblast, we can say that they achieved all their goals. They achieved all their goals, and according to the legal side, they should leave Zaporozhye and they should leave Kharkiv, because these 2 areas wasn't included into the Russian goals. But we understand that they are not going to do this. Maybe they will, I don't know, but I think that they won't do this. And for this perspective, they need, and I think that they're doing this right now. They try to find some legal side of this question, why they're not leaving Zaporozhye and Kharkiv. If we're talking about Kherson, everything we can understand. They will do referendum on this district, and according to United Nations laws, like their charter, it's possible when people from some region liberate themselves. And Kherson is controlled by 93%. But if you're talking about Zaporozhye and Kharkiv, there is less than 50% in population, because Zaporozhye is a very big town, and the rest of Zaporozhye has very low population. The same situation in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is the biggest town in Ukraine. So that's why it's impossible to hold any referendum in this area. But what kind of legal part the Russians are planning to find in this situation, it's very interesting. Now let's move to our big map of the Ukrainian operation. As you know, there is we just repeat one more time, there are few huge battles in the Donbas Arc operation. One of them on the south between Nikolaev and Kherson-Nikolaev battle, and we can say that there is withdrawal, nobody wins in this area. Ugledar-Volnovakha battle, and according to the latest update, we see that Ukrainians achieved some success, and I'm not saying that if we're talking about Nikolaev-Kherson, it's 50-50. But if you're talking Ugledar-Volnovakha, I must say that there is at least 55 to 45% in Ukrainian favor. If we're talking about Slavyansk bridgehead, I must say that Slavyansk battle, this one, the biggest 3 areas where I think that it's around 20 to 80, and 80 belongs to the Russians. So they are winning there. We understand this. If we're talking about Izium-Barvenkovo, the same situation, 50-50, because the Russians are moving here very slowly, without any progress. I'm talking about the territory and so on. And the Kharkiv, the same situation as in Ugledar, but in Russian favor, 55 to 45. The Russians are winning, and they're taking back town by town in this area. So we can say that the Ukrainians have only success in Ugledar-Volnovakha battle. This is the new battle. This battle started just a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, but it will be very interesting to follow this situation, because this is the only one area, according to my opinion. Of course, maybe you have a different opinion. According to my opinion, Ugledar-Volnovakha and also Ugledar-Volnovakha battle includes Avdiivka. I can say that this is the only one area where the Ukrainians have success, and they're doing their job very well in this area. So we'll see, and we'll follow this situation as well. Now let's talk about our Lysychansk battle. I have already prepared the map, and I marked this area with different colors. The yellow one is the territory that is 100% on the Ukrainians. The red one territory is the territory that the Russians managed to take control over. If you're talking about the red one with the blue border, this one it's very old. I'm talking about Lysychansk agglomeration operation. So as you can see, there are a few places where the Russians achieved success. The black one or gray one is the gray zone where the heavy clashes are. As you can see, for now, the Ukrainians, if we're talking about this operation, Ukrainians are still controls around 80% of this territory. Of course, there are a lot of talks, a lot of pictures from the internet. We see that the Ukrainians are losing. Maybe it might be some kind of speculation, of course, media war, because if we take a look at the West sources, we see that the totally different picture, that the Ukrainians are winning there. So of course we need to understand that maybe we should analyze ourselves and try to base our knowledge on facts. And we see that the Russians have some advances here. Of course, they're pushing, Ukrainians are retreating, but for now the Ukrainians still have some bridgehead to control and to protect, and they still are able and ready to fight. But if we take a look at the Russian source map, we're gonna see that the Ukrainians started the retreat process. They're not doing this unorganized. They're trying to do this with small groups, trying to retreat group by group. And for example, today there was a note that the Ukrainians managed to leave, to escape this area, and the number of soldiers were around 500. So I'm not saying that everybody left this area. There were losses, but I understand because of the fact that it wasn't announced like a huge and great victory by the Russians. I understand that at least 90% from those 500 managed to cross and leave this area. So the Ukrainians are trying to leave Lysychansk group by group. There are powerful fist in Siversk who is waiting for these forces and who is there just for one reason: to stop the Russians. It will try to push further. Furthermore, there are a lot of type of warriors, and there was some Russian sources are saying that, for example, in Lysychansk, there was cases when the Ukrainian soldiers was without food for a few days. That's why they dropped their position and ran away, because they don't have even anything to eat. It's according to the Russian sources and according to this map. I haven't found any improvements like video and so on, but this is the thing that I think should discuss. About the progress in this area, the Russians are pushing, and today I was very surprised because the Russians took these streets. This area in Lysychansk. Yesterday there was information that the Russians control around 30%, but I haven't got any proofs about this. Maybe by saying that the Russians controls around 30%, they meant that they control around 30% of Lysychansk agglomeration. In this case, we can believe, but I'm not sure that the Russians are able to can control 30% of entire town. There was certain confirmation that Vovcharovka is on the Russians and that they took these blocks on the south in this region. I remind you, it's like industrial zone and Friendship block. So they took this town, and if we compare, for example, Lysychansk agglomeration with our Gorsko-Zolotoy area, the cauldron that was finished a week ago, I can say that the forces that located here in this Friendship block and in this industrial zone are not able to retreat anymore. If the Russians do really have some success in this small block, and if they have if they're already in Maloryazantsevo and they mark this area as a gray zone, I must say that in particular these forces won't be able to escape this area. It's like the same situation as the forces in Zolotoy. You remember that when the Gorsko-Zolotoy cauldron was collapsed, there a lot of forces were trapped. Some of them would try to break through and they were killed by their own mines and so on. So these forces appears in the same situation. The best position, of course, for the Ukrainians who is located in Novodruzhevsk, Verkhnyokamyansk, it's already on the Ukrainian side. We can say, by the way, this is the border. We can say that those forces who is located on the Donetsk district is in the safe zone, and everybody who is on the east side from these gray dots, we can say that they're in big danger. If we're talking about roads, which Ukrainians are using for evacuation, so every single road goes through Bilogorovka. So the Ukrainians have their roads from Novodruzhevsk and from Lysychansk only using local roads, these brown dots, you see them. So they're moving something like this to Bilogorovka. Then from Bilogorovka there are also two local roads, and using these local roads they're trying to get somewhere here, and of course to Grigorievka. So this is their main roads of evacuation, and they're doing this right now. In this case, it's very important to discuss the bridgehead near Privilya. As you see, Privilya is marked as the gray zone because there are very heavy clashes. And as soon as Privilya falls, and to tell the truth, Privilya is already reduced to ruins. The Russians did this, were doing this for a very long time, shelling the Privilya, reducing every single building they can, just for one reason. As soon as they are able to cross the river, they need to have no barriers from their forces in Privilya that would move towards like the middle of this cross. So that's why this town is reduced, but this force is still a little bit fixed. So we'll see what's next in this area as well. As you can see, Lysychansk oil refinery is in the gray zone. There are very heavy clashes, and some sources are saying that the Russians has already established control over the east part and over the west part. There is like the Ukrainians somewhere in the middle trying to fight with both with forces that attack from both sides. Verkhnyokamyanka is under the Russians. More and more sources at least saying this. But if we take a look at the Russian source map, even the gray zone is not there. Maybe they're just these improvements I found just on the Telegram channels and more about this. So I marked this area as the territory under the Russians, but there is still high risk that this territory also is in the gray zone, or at least, for example, the Ukrainians is in the south and on the north. And I must say that the Ukrainians are retreating and the Russians are pushing, and there are very heavy clashes all along the front line in every single area, in every single small town, street in this Lysychansk agglomeration. If the Russians are able to take control over this entire agglomeration, I'm not sure, because today I found some confirmation even from the Russian sources that the Ukrainians will try, of course, to evacuate forces as much as possible, but I understand that there are going to be some rear guards because it's impossible to retreat, as we discussed, for these forces, and somebody needs to keep the Russians while the other forces will try to evacuate. And if there are around 8,000 soldiers. A lot of them has already evacuated, but if there are 8,000 soldiers, we understand that the process of evacuation might take up to 1 week, so that's why this process might be very long time. And furthermore, the Ukrainians bring some forces towards Siversk, and of course they also will do their job trying to move some forces, some attention on them, just with one purpose, to give the Ukrainians possibility to retreat. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, and enjoy your day. Bye bye.